Hey, so in our last lesson, we talked about tips to help you with debates and difficult or controversial conversations in English. And in this lesson, we're going to learn some phrases that you can use in debates and controversial or tough conversations. So if you haven't seen that lesson, make sure that you watch it either before or after this one. And let's get started. All right, first up, let's talk about agreeing with someone and adding to their point. Of course, the most simple way is just to say, I agree and, okay? I agree and. That's an easy one. You could also say you're right or you're absolutely right. And to add to that, and then you continue on with your point. So you're right, you're absolutely right. And to add to that, and then go ahead and add your information or your point. You could also say, that's a great point, and then continue on with your additional point. And a more formal option for a more formal situation would be, that's a valid argument, and I would like to expand on that point by mentioning or by saying, okay? Now, with all of today's phrases, you can always tweak them a little bit to make them more formal or more casual depending on the situation. It's always important to consider your tone and to choose your wording carefully, okay? So these are a fantastic starting point, but of course you can make them a little more formal or a little less formal depending. Now let's say you want to agree a little bit or to an extent or disagree. Here are some phrases you can use. You can say, I agree to an extent, but. I agree to an extent, but. This is a good one for when you agree with some of the argument, but you don't agree 100%. So maybe you agree with 1 or 2 points they've made or 10% of what they're saying, but you don't totally agree, okay? I agree to an extent, but, and then you want to give your counter argument. Another option is, I understand your perspective, but I have to respectfully disagree. I understand your perspective, but I have to respectfully disagree. This is a nice one for when you want to respectfully disagree. You're acknowledging the other person's opinion. You've acknowledged what they've said. You've heard, you've listened, you've understood, but you don't agree with it. This is a good one for those situations. While I can see where you're coming from, I have a different opinion. While I can see where you're coming from, I have a different opinion, okay? So similarly here, you are acknowledging the other person's opinion, the other person's experience, their perspective, but you don't agree. And then you go ahead and give your perspective. You can also say, I'm afraid I can't agree because. I'm afraid I can't agree. In this phrase, I'm afraid actually means unfortunately, okay? Unfortunately, I can't agree. Because it's important to be ready to give your counter argument or your opinion. It's much more effective than just saying, I can't agree, okay? You need to always explain why to make your point valid. And you can simply say, I have to disagree. I have to disagree. This is a stronger and more direct statement, but is also effective as long as you are ready to say why you disagree and defend and support that argument. Let's say that you have to ask for some more information or for some clarification. You didn't fully understand or get a point, and you need to ask for some more information or clarification. Here are some phrases you can use. You could say, could you explain what you mean by, and the point that you didn't understand? You simply repeat the point or the sentence that you didn't get. You could also say, I'm not sure what you mean by this. Could you please explain? I'm not sure what you mean. Could you please explain it? And a slightly more formal option is, could you elaborate on this point, or could you elaborate on that, okay? Elaborate on just means give some more detail, give some more information, explain it a little bit more, and this is a more formal choice of words. Now, of course, in debates and difficult discussions, there will be objections. Not everyone is going to agree. So here are some phrases for handling objections or responding to objections. I understand your concern. However, and then you go ahead and give your point. I understand your concern. However, I appreciate your perspective, but Now this is a good one because you are acknowledging the other person's perspective, even though it is different than yours, and then you go ahead and present your argument. You can also say, while that may be true, it's important to remember that. While that may be true, it's important to remember that, and then you give the details that you'd like to share. Now, even when you disagree or you don't see eye to eye, it's important to be respectful and empathetic. So here are some phrases you can use to express empathy and understanding. I understand that this is a very personal topic for you, and I'm trying to see it from your perspective. I understand that this is a personal topic for you, and I'm trying to see it from your perspective. Or, of course, I appreciate that we all have our own unique experiences and perspectives. Of course, I appreciate that we all have our own unique experiences and perspectives. Now, what about when a conversation or a discussion is getting a little bit heated or emotional? Here are some phrases you can use. You can say, okay, I think we've gotten a little off topic here, or we're getting off topic. We've gotten a little off topic, or we are getting off topic. You can also say, this conversation is getting a little heated. Why don't we take a minute and regroup? This conversation is getting a little heated. Why don't we take a minute and regroup? Now, this is not appropriate for all situations, but in some situations it is appropriate to take a break and come back. You can also say, I think we need to cool down or calm down. I think we need to cool down or calm down. Another option is, okay, let's take a step back for a minute. Okay, let's just take a step back. So let's take a little break. Or if you think it's time to end the conversation, you can say, all right, we'll have to agree to disagree. Let's agree to disagree. Like, we cannot reach a conclusion here. We clearly do not see eye to eye, and this conversation is getting heated and going nowhere. In these situations, you can just say, let's agree to disagree. Here are some useful phrases for acknowledging that a topic is difficult to discuss. I understand that this is a sensitive subject. I understand that this is a sensitive subject or a sensitive topic. Another option, I recognize that this is a controversial issue. I recognize that this is a controversial issue. Or, I'm aware that discussing this can be challenging. I'm aware that discussing this can be challenging. Or, I know it's not easy to talk about this. I know it's not easy to talk about this. These phrases are very nice. It's very useful to acknowledge when people might be uncomfortable. That actually helps them to become more comfortable. So keep these phrases in mind. In the last lesson, I mentioned that active listening is important. So here are some phrases to help you with active listening and paraphrasing. You could say, let me make sure I've understood your point correctly. Let me make sure I've understood your point correctly. And then you go ahead and say whatever you've understood. Another option, so if I've understood correctly, you're saying, if I've understood you correctly, you're saying this. Right? Or it sounds like you're concerned about this. Now, this is a good one for when you want to rephrase or paraphrase whatever you've understood. Sounds like you're concerned about this. And sometimes you need to ask for a little clarification, in which case you can use these phrases or these questions. You can simply ask, why do you think that? Why do you think that? Or, can I ask why you feel that way? Can I ask why you feel that way? Or, can you give me an example? Can you give me an example of that? Okay, so sometimes you need clarification or a little more information. These are some good questions. It's also good to try to find common ground or some shared opinions, even with a person you don't generally agree with. And here are some phrases that you can use. You could say, can we agree that, and you establish one point that you both agree on. Or you could say, so we've established that, is that correct? So we've established that one point, is that correct? To sum up or conclude your discussion or conversation, you could say, so taking everything into account, this means considering everything we talked about, and then you can give your closing remarks, okay? Another nice option, so all things considered. So all things considered. If you want to end your conversation on a positive note, even if it was difficult, you can use these phrases. Thank you for sharing your perspective. Thank you for sharing your perspective. Or, I appreciate you talking about this with me. I appreciate you talking about this with me. Or, I know it wasn't easy, but thank you for talking about this. I know it wasn't easy, but thank you for talking about this, okay? So whenever possible, try to end on a positive note if you can. Remember that these phrases are a starting point to help you participate in effective, healthy discussions, even when it comes to tough topics or controversial subjects. But it is extremely important to still practice active listening, to keep an open mind, and to be respectful when you're engaged in this type of conversation. Now, if you are trying to take your conversation skills to the next level, make sure you grab your free ebook, English Conversations Made Simple. I will link that down below the lesson. If you enjoyed today's lesson, please do give it a thumbs up and subscribe. This really helps the channel to grow and to reach English learners all around the world. Thanks so much for watching, learning, and spending time here with me today. I'll see you very soon in another one.